Today we have buy one, get one free Mythic Plus reviews. We're going to see something in the first key that is going to unfold directly in the second key, and I really want to hear some of your guys' thoughts on whether or not you could have predicted this would have been the outcome. I think I have seen enough over the years to say that yes, this is something that we kind of dodge a bullet on in the first key, and then in the next key we kind of run into that wall that was inevitably coming for us. But yeah, definitely interested in hearing some of your guys' thoughts. Let's get right to the review. So we are looking for an Ara-Kara plus 10. This is a balanced druid perspective. As you see, the player needs the 10s. I think this is an interesting discussion on its own because I bet there's a lot of people farming 10s at this point who do not actually need them from score. Now, so we have a healer apply. This could have saved a lot of problems here. We get them in the group, and then they just like randomly leave the party without saying anything, maybe inspecting people. You never know why people do that. I really don't get it. You know, if that person stays in this group, we won't have this footage that we're about to show you here today, because shortly thereafter, we have a duo sign up, a monk healer and a demon hunter tank. Now, we've talked a lot about this, but I have to cut in because there's actually something going on here that I did not originally catch when we started this review. So for whatever reason, when they sign up, you see people who are like 2,500 or something like that in the queue. I don't know if that's the Raider.io add-on being out of date. I don't know what's causing that, but this is what the actual guy's Raider.io score looks like. This is a 2,900 player signing up alongside a 2,700 player who has an alt with a hilarious name, by the way, who's also a 2,900 player. So these guys are doing some 13s, done mostly 12s now. So they're doing a 10 that is clearly a farm key. I do not know why that happens, but that is important to understand moving forward as it's going to come up at the very end. They are a tank and healer duo, which I think, you know, is a little bit of a problem too. Like, my problem with duos is very simple. They're going to prioritize themselves over the group, and this is bad when you already have people being extremely selfish in the pug world. Typically, I also expect them to have some kind of predisposed emotions towards being in a group of other people that aren't their friends too, and I've seen this a lot over the years where like those two friends can kind of like support each other through hard times, and you know, these people are not that emotionally stable, so that means a lot of times just like making fun of somebody else or kind of taking out some juvenile aggression towards other people. This is why I normally have some problems inviting duos. But I think this is a very interesting situation here because he has 3 DPS in this queue. People talk about how it's hard to find tanks and healers all the time. And then a tank and healer duo signs up who looks like they are more than qualified for the key. But I think the attitudes that you can see unfold over the next 2 dungeons that we review here are very indicative of what I would have expected from this level of people trying to queue as a tank and a healer. So we are on to the first boss. We had a couple deaths along the way. It's nothing really that relevant. The healer died, and then a few other deaths kind of trickled in when they died. It may be something that's agitating people. I don't really know, but this is the first remarkable moment of the run here. We have a Fury Warrior. He is commenting on the boss's positioning before the boss even spawns. He says, please tank boss near ads. Okay, now we talked a lot about this on this channel. It is theoretically possible to tank the boss directly next to the ads as long as they are not so close that he instantly eats them, because they do fixate on players. So if you understand exactly how close that can be, then that means that you can theoretically tank them directly next to the ads and cleave both at the same time. This would be a substantial DPS gain, and I think it's probably looked at as something that you would never even think of not doing in any type of serious coordination of groups. But in a pug world, I think it's ridiculous. Like, why would you even risk this? Yeah, in this group, we got 2 ranged, even the Mistweaver doing good range damage, so I think we're fine, right? It doesn't get brought up. There's nothing to say here. Nobody comments on it other than that. The tank doesn't do it. The warrior asked him to do it. He didn't respond to it, but I imagine that they're probably talking about this if they're in Discord together. You know, this is what I'm thinking about when you're talking about duos. They may be conversing about that right now, and potentially, like I said, kind of patting each other on the back, like, oh, that guy's an idiot, you're doing it perfectly. You know, like, I think that's a kind of dangerous mentality to have in a pug setting, because everybody is supposed to be on the same page, everybody's supposed to be on the same team, but there may be 2 people on this team that are not already on the same page with everybody else. And I'm bringing it up because of what's about to happen here, okay? I think this is where we start to see maybe some of that frustration that was already building up a bubble over here. So yes, totally standard. I mean, I don't think anything about this is abnormal here. We're going to pull this whole bridge. There's a lot of mechanics, and then of course, yes, the blood guard or whatever, he's going to make everything take less damage. So our friend the Fury Warrior, who asked for I guess a strategy change on the first boss and didn't get it, now comments on I mean, look at the damage is crushing it. Like, the pack is getting annihilated. No issues here whatsoever. Just randomly decides to backseat the tank, like for really no reason. I can't even imagine it. He says the guy reduces damage by 50% to everything, by the way. Read the debuff. The Demon Hunter says, so, question mark, then I guess manages to die while typing is what he's going to allege here. He starts typing, the Demon Hunter is obviously like getting tilted. I guess he just stops playing his character. The monk kind of seems to not keep him up either, but either way, he's going to die to that. He's going to die to that. And I've seen that a million times, myself included. Every time I type, I always am in danger. But this is going to be frustrating, I bet, right, for this guy. Imagine what these kind of private conversations might look like if you have a duo here. Strange, really, really, really bizarre backseating of the tank on, I don't know. I mean, has this guy not seen that done? Like, does he genuinely believe it is slower to combine both of those packs? And then, the Demon Hunter is probably now frustrated by that. Like, if it was me, somebody saying that to me, I would be frustrated, and you could see that frustration bubbling over. He said, died to typing to that guy about a pull every tank does, XD. And the way he says it makes me think that, like I said, like, there's this juvenile affirmation going on, either in his head or in his social group, where people are, like, taking the opportunity to laugh at the situation instead of just try to brush it off, right? And I would imagine that this guy has put that guy on ignore now, just based on the way he responds and his tone and the way he types it. Again, typing in combat, this is important to him to validate himself on this, and I think he's getting that importance from his friend who's offering that same validation. Like, okay, well, my friend's validating me, so I need to validate myself in front of the group too. This is very common behavior that you see, like, from a psychological standpoint. It's very understandable, but it is Ara-Kara, and that's why this is so interesting, because it's so freaking easy, right? Like, so watch. So this guy, I mean, this is Demon Hunter heaven right here, by the way. Just like leaps in, just gets to the boss like 4 globals ahead of other people, all right? So the warrior is gonna maybe struggle to get there. I don't really think so. He's got charge, but one way or the other, he's gonna get there kind of late, and as you see, taking a lot of damage from that like swirling cloud thing. I don't really understand how he dies so easily to that. It makes me think, is the healer not healing him? I don't know. Are we that petty? I don't really know, but he gets a res and he dies to the same thing again. Let's rewatch that. I've not healed this. I don't really know. Is it normal to be as a DPS to get killed like that from 2 stacks? We are going to battle res the guy. I'm sure, now after all that backseating, he's probably a little bit emotional, but he's going to basically res directly inside 2 of them, and he's going to die again. And that one's just a little bit unfortunate. I don't know that was anything other than just unfortunate there. But of course, because of the backseating, we have the tank now types a question mark and says, what are you doing? Rest of the key goes off without a hitch. It's, again, Ara-Kara. Very, very, very easy. Going down the right side, we're actually going to be way over count. Just something to note here. As you see, 96.5%, and there's all this trash left. Going to be at 100%, and we still have an overseer alive. So this is definitely something that we can adjust on the route, but again, nothing to do with the success of the dungeon. And we get to the last boss. At this point, I think we're in a high enough key that people have understood this fight. They've mastered it. It's still got the affixes, so it's a little bit difficult. We get a little lucky there. The Demon Hunter kind of jumps right over the druid. I think that could have been really, really, really disastrous, but luckily there was enough puddles for everybody. So if you're just purely looking at it objectively, the dungeon was extremely successful. They actually double upgrade the key. No real big mistakes. We had 8 deaths, but there was no real wipes. Everything else is totally normal and very, very easy. And in fact, we get score and our portal from this. So congratulations, 49 points for that. So we're celebrating. Everybody's getting success here. We just double upgraded to 10. But you can see in the chat, this is exactly what I was talking about. I knew it was coming. You can tell by the guy's attitude and by what's going on in the group that this is how it was going to go every time. He says, I love when some guys try to critique my route and then dies on the next boss twice without using a defensive. But that's not what he died to. You know what I mean? He did not die to not using a defensive. That's an absurd statement to make. He got hit by a mechanic. The first time was really bad, honestly. Like, that's just very poor play. Maybe the guy can't see them for some reason. Who knows? But the second time, he just gets battle resed into a really unlucky position. So yeah, critiquing that guy like that is pure, I'm frustrated with him and I'm taking out like some juvenile stand on this. That's what I see in this, and went exactly as I would have expected it to based on the fact that they're queuing together as a duo, and it happened, but not in a way that destroyed the key. And like I said, I think that's important because I think he's probably still frustrated, probably still holding these emotions moving forward. The Warrior's only response to that is all caps, 3 letters. He says sad. So, I mean, it was kind of really stupid on his part, but like, anyway, that key's over, right? We're good. They upgraded, double upgraded even, so it's time to move on. I've seen this so many times over the years that it's got already a bad taste in my mouth. But I'm already thinking like, oh my God, I don't want anything to do with any of those people again. Definitely not the Warrior backseating the tank for no reason, and definitely not the tank lashing out and dying because he's typing to something that he just needs to ignore, right? But look at this. They sign up again. So instead of doing the 12, by the way, we just lowered the key to 10. I don't know that these guys are farming keys or what, but they sign up again and then decline the invite. See, very, very interesting situation here. I don't know what might be going on there. He might have seen it was the druid and thinking, oh, well, he's probably with the Warrior, so I'm not going to sign up again, right? Because he also has a Warrior warrior in the group already. But substantial amount of time is going to pass, and they're going to sign up a second time, and this time they're going to get the invite to the group again. And now, so at this point, before we move on, I want you guys to answer this question in your head. Would you invite them a second time, especially after what we just saw, especially after you see them sign up and then decline the invite and then sign up a second time? Would you bring them back? To me, absolutely, under no circumstances am I gambling on these guys. But I'm also not a DPS sitting there maybe thinking there will never be another tank signing up. I don't know what the reality of this level is. So maybe you're almost in a situation where you're kind of stuck with these guys. So everybody's here. We're waiting on the warrior. We have another funny moment here where the warrior is not aware of what dungeon they're doing, even though 4 people are literally in the dungeon. I do this all the time. I sign up to keys and forget what key I signed up to. But the way I solve it is usually I just hover over the people's names, and you could see that they're in Grim Batol, like this, just like physically standing inside Grim Batol, so you would know what dungeon it is. But we're gonna go ahead and start the dungeon here. First pull, a little bit of a swaggy play. We used, what's that, the hunt to get there like ASAP, then we drop Silence Sigil on the caster and just run ahead. Pretty cool, but the warrior ends up dying on the way in. Does this ability hit all of these targets? I don't know. Does he like miss threat on the right one or something? He hits that guy, it gets a debuff, but this brute, yeah, I don't think he ever got threat. Yeah, he never has threat on this brute. The warrior charges to the right brute and it just unfortunately, you know, chose the wrong target there because the other 2 he had threat on, and it just melees him to death, which is really unfortunate. This happens all the time with DPS. I have no idea why people do this. I guess they're just not aware that people are trying to combine a big pull here. But again, almost another one of these moments that, like, if I was frustrated already as a tank, this would be even more frustrating. We're tanking in this spot for a very specific reason. It's so you can easily line of sight the mechanics. Now, this is actually kind of a funny little death here. We have a bunch of puddles underneath us, like kind of from the previous mechanic, and instead of line of sighting, we're just going to eat it and then get knocked into a puddle and then die to that. I think both people probably have that same death there. 2 deaths there. Didn't bloodlust. Really awkward start to this dungeon, and we already have 3 deaths on the opening pack without it. No bloodlust, and then the DPS deaths mean this pack is taking really long to die, so there's like puddles everywhere. There's like nowhere to stand. Shaman is probably again not going to line of sight, and then probably also dies the exact same thing, getting knocked into a puddle. We're not stopping the cast. A lot of damage going out here, and this pack is going very poorly. Like, look at the DPS chart. And of course, the Demon Hunter, who we just played with and as we know is frustrated and we chose to invite anyway, says, "What are y'all doing?" All right, now I think, to be fair, I could see why he's frustrated, but guess what? He dies again while typing to these mobs. One of the hardest pack in the game, to be honest, so you should know this. This is a very dangerous pack. To be commenting on other people's deaths at this point is just totally pointless. Nobody said anything to him this time. Nobody backseated him this time, but you know that he's still frustrated from the previous dungeon because of that. But anyway, yeah, this pack is ripping this fella up. The healer dies randomly, and then the tank is going to just get overwhelmed by the overseer. So we have now 7 deaths to 2 trash packs. Still haven't used bloodlust or anything like that, but we're going to continue. Another standard pull, lots of casters, lots of potential damage that can be avoided, and not doing the best job of any of that. We're going to have another death to swirls, another avoidable death, I think probably similar to how it happened on the previous pulls. Just area denial stuff not working out for these people. That guy's going to onk, I guess. Demon Hunter then another comment says, "Please," obviously frustrated with the deaths. There's another death from the tremor getting off, and then also maybe a swirl as well. The warrior's going to go down. Healer has now almost been killed again in our favorite area here now. Lots of danger, lots of interrupts, lots of mechanics. Going pretty slow through the area. I'm not really sure why. Partially because he pulls this side instead of the right side, which I don't know how you guys feel about that. I think at this point we are dangerously close to having a serious issue here. Now you can see at the very top of the screen, the boss is on its way, and we're not even halfway done with this pack. The warrior realizes that he's just like sprinting away, but this is inevitable calamity coming up here. We actually do avoid fighting it with trash, but the warrior just charges in instantly and dies. Tank is not happy about that. He says, "Bro, what are you doing?" Like, zero thought in your head. And now this point, now we really have to start commenting on it, because like, okay, tanking the pack in the middle of the room, you know the boss is coming, you know it's slow, you know how long it's taking everybody to get this stuff killed, and you know the boss, it's going to aggro. Like 100% of the time, it is going to aggro in this situation. You need to know that as a tank. You know, I think it's truly frustration, I'm sure. Like, to say that like the warrior made an unfortunate decision, yes, but to like freak out at him for that, it's like, no, brother, you just need to taunt that. Like, that's obviously going to happen every time. This is why you don't want the boss to patrol into you while you're fighting trash. We barely get away with this too, because of this like awkward, I don't know if the guy actually intended to do this too. Like, maybe he actually intended to fight the boss in this position. position. Super awkward, barely had enough room to do the fight, partially because another death happened, another DPS died. Now we're going to come out here and do some craziness. Watch this. He's going to try to gather everything in this area all in one pull. This is pretty wild. This is like an enormous amount of danger here. There is just way too many mechanics, way too many things to heal, way too many things to interrupt here. It's surprising that it goes as well as it does, to be honest. But yeah, the warrior is going to go down. It's actually fine though. We're going to get through it. A lot of danger, but the healer's up for the task, and there is no other deaths to this. The lava bender is now super low. It's the last one alive though. This is actually the hardest part right now. It's because we kind of exhausted everything, and we are going to barely scrape by without another death. That is one of the craziest pulls. And just insane advice here from the Demon Hunter. What a great tip. He says, you need to not die there. Way more damage going out. What a great tip. The warrior replies. This is a perfect response, by the way. He says, oh, I thought we needed to die. Yeah, I can see why. You've died like 6 times already. It's making me wonder, is like the demon hunter and warrior relationship that of like mortal enemies? Are they actually enemies? I've never really seen 2 of them in a group together, so maybe that's the case. Like, is this common? Tanking dangerously close to these lava benders. I'm really shocked that they do not aggro by accident here. They do finally aggro. He pulls them on purpose. I don't know what this route is, by the way. Like, I feel like we are going to have like 200% count after all this stuff got aggroed. Warrior's doing his best warrior impression though. Comes to swirl. Don't move out of that. Just stand in that. Keep swirling your blade around. So that's another death for that fella. Demon Hunter again comment. I mean, I don't know how many deaths this guy has, but I think every one of his deaths have had a comment from the Demon Hunter. This is just insanity. Like, do you think this is helping? I'm not really sure. Like, why are you commenting on it? He says these DPS deaths are brutal. You can't die on that pull, as he dies to typing again. He says it takes 30% longer and the damage becomes unhealable because you can't walk out of a swirl. Crazy. The warrior finally is sick of it. He says, you are a very toxic person. The Demon Hunter says, I'm trying to help you. How many times have you heard that? Not in a toxic way. Yeah, definitely not in a toxic way. You're commenting on every one of his deaths with bro. I'm explaining the ramifications of your mistake and how it wiped our group. Do you understand that? Good option here. This is why you don't pull this pack, man, because this pack is just way too dangerous. The guy says tank instead of typing, which is ironic because yes, he has now died multiple times in this footage to typing instead of tanking. He's not gonna like that. He is not gonna like that at all. He says there's nothing to tank and now you're being toxic. Enjoy. GG. Then leaves the key. The warrior says ha 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 toxic, and the druid who submitted this, all he has to say is my key ... Really sad. He's gonna actually report him. Now guess what though? We're not done. We're not done here. The monk says you can't invite people like that. The warrior was brutal, man. Uh-oh. Single-handedly bricked the key. Did he? Are we sure about that? Are we 100% sure about that? Meanwhile, the warrior is still saying, I should have just said nothing. He clearly had mental issues, so at least he recognizes that. Died on every big pull and stood in a swirl in the hardest pull in the dungeon, which is skippable, by the way. The monk says, the key is hard as it is. No word from the Demon Hunter, probably because he got reported, I think. I don't know, you can't probably whisper people after you get reported, right? He says, you can't have DPS players that stand in every swirl and just blow their CDs before mobs are even in position, lol. Which again, truthfully, not what happened. You missed threat on the first pack, whatever. Like, the warrior shouldn't be doing damage, but still, like, you missed threat on the first pack, and then the boss is patrolling into you. Like, you can't expect these things to not happen. This is just how it's gonna go every time. Okay, so now we're gonna reply to the monk saying this. He says, I get it. I knew he was gonna have negative IQ when he didn't know what dungeon he was in and started heading to Dawnbreaker. Then say, but your friend does have a way of getting mad. That's putting it lightly. The monk says, just in the future, be careful on vetting. Like, oh, okay, this is really funny. Only invite 26 to 2,700 players to 10. He says, I am not 2,700 myself. The monk says, it doesn't matter. He says, the tank is 2,800. I'm 2,700. So we could have invited all 2,700 players. And this is really kind of the problem we've been alluding to the whole time. Like, inviting people who do not need the key, who do not respect the key. Like, they all have these attitudes, right? They look at these keys as they're just below them. Like, the guy's literally saying, like, you invited somebody even though he needs the key for score. This was a stupid invite. You should have known the guy's gonna suck. Like, this has nothing to do with it. You're never going to be able to predict the warrior's going to make those deaths. Like, this is ridiculous. And he says, you would have two-chested it. That first pull was enough of a warning. The key was going to be deplete. Like, you can tell they're bringing these attitudes in. Like, they just do not care about this key. They do not respect this group. He says, also never invite DPS warriors. They're invariably bad. Notice how both keys had a trash DPS warrior. I told you, they're like mortal enemies, right? In Ara-Kara, we were able to carry him because it's a very easy key. Batol is just way too hard for that. He has a 10 Batol with 2,800 tank. It's not easy enough to carry one player. That's definitely the problem. Yeah, I think we've seen enough there. I mean, you know how this is going to end. And I think it was very predictable. I really, really do. So eager to hear you guys' thoughts at that mid-video question. Do you think this was something you would have gambled on? Would you take these guys a second time? I think it was pretty clear that they were probably in there frustrated, especially the first warrior. Like, you can tell it's on their mind in the second key. It's pretty clear that they haven't gotten over that yet. And even if you think about it, like, all right, well, they're still worth bringing regardless of that. Like, you're inviting somebody who's already tilted. Like, would you want to play with somebody? Even if they're good players, even if you think they're good people, like, they're still going to be hindered by that. And any one small mistake is going to set them off. I could have predicted it. Yeah, it's a very unique one, very psychological, very get into the heads of these people, very unique situation in the pug world. I think this is really why I love pugging so much, because there's so much going on. There's so many layers to it. It really tells you a lot about the people involved, and we've seen all kinds of people. Make sure you guys keep recording and sending in these crazy runs you guys are running into. There's been so many good ones already this season, and we still got plenty of time to keep going. So thank you for watching. We will see you guys in the next one.